Hey everyone, I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise. On today's episode, I have the privilege to speak with Sabrina Elba, an actress, model, United Nations Goodwill ambassador, and the co-founder of Sable Labs, an inclusive, socially responsible skincare line that produces products for melanated skin. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Selena, for having me. It's so nice to speak to you today.
Of course, of course. So I want to start with just the inspiration, your inspiration behind your launch of Sable Labs.
My baby. It's been almost 3 years since launch now, which feels so crazy to say. I mean, at the time that I had started the brand, I just felt really underrepresented in the beauty and wellness industry, being someone of color, having issues like hyperpigmentation and the such. And I didn't find that there was anything on the market that not only treated my issues that my skin was facing effectively, but also spoke to me personally as an African woman. And I realized very quickly that a lot of the ingredients I grew up sort of watching my mom use, like hustle and baobab and amazing African ingredients, were actually on these beauty counters, but represented in a way that felt so far removed from how I grew up hearing about them. For instance, you wouldn't even see a face or a name or know that these ingredients were African if you came across them at a Whole Foods, for instance. And I felt sort of a responsibility to reclaim the stories behind those ingredients and to create a melanin inclusive brand, like you mentioned, one that was focused around a beauty, generations of knowledge and ancestral traditions that, are effective. They've been passed down through generations because they work. Whether or not pharmaceutical industries are telling us they do or don't, these ingredients are powerful, and I wanted to do justice by them. They're the most powerful antioxidants in the world, but do that making sure that I protect the people behind the ingredients and the stories behind the ingredients as well.
And I wanted to delve a bit more into that, just your passion for not just protecting the communities in which these ingredients are sourced, but just the overall wellness of our planet. I know that with Sable Labs, you are also very intentional about producing products with the lowest environmental impact. Why is that so important to you?
I'm really fortunate to have come from, a bit of philanthropic experience in my advocacy work. I'd worked with climate organizations. I'd been a UN Goodwill ambassador, as you mentioned, for Ephad. So I understood a lot of the challenges rural people were facing. So at the time that I started the brand, I was equipped with some knowledge, right? And I didn't want to create something that was going to cause further harm or to carry on narratives that were harming people. So I made sure when we started the brand, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Because to be honest, the most sustainable route is to not do anything, right? To not create more. So if we are going to do it, let's show other brands that this can be done, particularly in the way that we source our ingredients. We responsibly and traceably source all our raw materials from communities that we meet, that we know, so that we can see and ensure that some of the problems in the supply chain aren't happening when we're formulating. And this is something that I've become increasingly passionate about because, it seems almost impossible, especially for small brands, to do it this way. So we almost became this watch us and learn type brand because we wanted to show people that it could be done. And there's now this beautiful renaissance of, A-beauty BIPOC brands coming up who are doing this, who are proving that it can be done. And I feel so proud of that. We were one of the first brands to talk about A-beauty and bring that into the mainstream, and to see that kind of flourishing now and doing its thing has just made me feel so fulfilled. So it's been a personal piece of pride to do it this way, but I also think as a responsible citizen of this world, it's the only way to do it.
And Sabrina, for those who don't know, what does the term A-beauty mean?
I think it used to refer to Australian beauty. We were like, hold on, there's a whole nother world. But A-beauty for us is ancestral traditions, practices, ingredients that are passed down throughout the entire continent, generation to generation, that are wholly effective. The climate has some of the harshest conditions. So these botanicals have to be extra resilient to survive in these conditions, which makes A-beauty really valuable because of its efficacy. So we wanted to keep a lot of those stories alive. We wanted to make sure that we could find and source ingredients that were like secret gems across the continent, use them in our formulations. And we also wanted to keep some of the traditions alive, So for us, A-beauty is this gorgeous world that we can just go in and be inspired at every glance. And like, oh my gosh, have you heard of this moringa ingredient? Have you heard of black seed? Have you heard of, and I mean, it's been like talking to aunties to reading research papers. There's a wealth of knowledge. And I just want A Beauty to be recognized for its efficacy, but I also want to kind of break this. I think there is a misunderstanding when it comes to A Beauty for some reason that it's only for black skin. And we hear that a lot. Are your products suitable for my skin as well? We hear that from other people. And I'm like, yes, of course. We wouldn't ask that about K Beauty, right? These are ingredients that have been tried and tested and they work for everyone. And that's the reason we call ourselves a melanin inclusive brand, is that we consider the needs of melanin rich skin by using these amazing antioxidants and other methods, which makes the skincare better for everyone, because black skin is actually the most sensitive subgroup. So start with us first and you get something better for everyone.
There you go. Sabrina, I read that the cosmetics industry uses many ingredients that are high risk for using child labor, like cocoa, shea, vanilla, palm oil, copper, and others. What sparked your interest in the issue of ethical sourcing of cosmetic ingredients?
Exactly that. The shock of finding out that something that we're putting on our skin, to help beautify us or to help us stay younger could be associated with such horrendous issues. I don't think anybody walks into a store and picks up a product off a counter and thinks, oh, there's CL behind this product, or rural people are being abused in this process. I mean, that just should not be the case. It shouldn't even be a thought, really, right? So I think the shock of that and wanting to show people that there's an alternative option, but also, Selena, what you did when you read and you found out that problem existed is also so important to now share that knowledge. So we've just felt a responsibility to help educate people that, we talk about fair trade food, we talk about fashion that's sourced ethically, but we don't talk about it when it comes to the beauty industry. And those same hurdles in those supply chains exist in the beauty supply chain as well. So, I had came across a report called The High Cost of Beauty that World Vision had created that touched on a lot of the issues that we were trying to bring into light. And we knew after reading that report that they'd be great partners to kind of amplify some of these stories just to raise the education of these issues, because not enough people are talking about these issues. So I think for me, it was just this feeling again of responsibility of wanting to share these stories so that people know and can make smarter decisions. If a brand doesn't talk about its transparency in its supply chain, you need to question that and be a responsible citizen, a responsible consumer. And I think people will do that if they are equipped with the knowledge.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned World Vision, which is a global Christian humanitarian organization. I understand that you had a recent trip with World Vision to Ghana. Can you tell us what was so eye-opening about that trip and what you learned?
Oh, it was such a great trip. First of all, I love Ghana. Ghana is like becoming a second home. If you haven't been, Selena, you have to go. It's so beautiful.
It's on the bucket list.
Is it? Okay. If you go, you let me know, right?
I will. I definitely will let you know.
Got all the spots now. I do love Ghana. And I was just so excited about the idea of sharing the stories of rural people with content creators, with storytellers, so that their voices could be amplified, even tenfold my platforms, And I think World Vision are the perfect partner in that they share a lot of the same missions when it comes to the supply chain and building transparency around that, because they see how that directly leads into issues like CL. And World Vision, is child focused at its heart. So in trying to protect children, they've protected rural women. And I think it's so important to realize that, we say rural people are farming these ingredients. It's rural women. It's women who look like us, Selena, that are behind these products and these ingredients. So I just wanted to make sure that their voices were heard. And something I recognized very early on is my platform. The best thing about having a platform is that you can give it to somebody and that you can let them tell their story and share their voices to a greater group of people. It's about giving them a room at the table or a seat at the table, right? So when we were bringing storytellers and content creators out with us to visit these rural people and rural women, it really was just so that their voices could be heard and amplified. But also, again, that educational piece of showing people this is what rural people are going through firsthand. This is the labor-intensive process that they're going through to farm ingredients like shea, for instance. And these are why these issues come up again and again. And, just seeing the faces come alive on the people that we brought on this trip, just being like, oh my gosh, it was like a light bulb went off. Of course, people are the face of climate change. A Black woman is the face of climate change. So it was just about bringing those issues to light.
And Sabrina, I'm glad that you brought up climate change. That's another issue that you've been passionate about. Can you talk about just the connection between ethical sourcing of ingredients and the fight for climate change?
So, when we talk about extreme weather events, we're thinking 5, 10, 20 years in the future in the global north. But when you're looking at the global south, these events are happening now. I was in Zambia, I think this is a year ago now, Selena, and I was driving by in a taxi along sort of like a farming rural area. And I was looking and noticing that the fields were all black. And I said to the driver, oh, why are the fields all black? And he's like, raining season didn't come. It's not that it was late. It just didn't come that year. These events are happening now. Drought is affecting Africa at a rate that's really scary. And I think people don't realize that if you're a rural person, you're farming, your ingredients, your land, that's your capital, your livestock, whatever that might be. These weather impacts affect your livelihood. From that second that they happen, if you can't predict if it's going to rain tomorrow, how are you meant to farm, at the very least? So these two things are wholly connected. Rural people are also the custodians of our planet. They protect the biodiversity of our planet. They understand the conditions of the soil and what's needed for it to be at its best. We need to look at them as an investment. And that's one of the reasons I work with Ephad as well, is because they are a financial institution that provides farmers a sense of opportunity, a sense of entrepreneurship. You can go back to rural areas, have a plot of land, farm something successfully, and not have to worry about, extreme weather events affecting your capital, your business. And that's the kind of work I've become passionate about now. I think it's just so easy to forget that there are people who are being affected by it now, who have so little a footprint, and it's really the global north's footprint that they're feeling. It's not their contribution. So we almost have a responsibility as people in the global north to give back and to invest in the people who are taking care of us. They feed a large portion of the world. They take care of a lot of the land. And they are amazing, hardworking people. They're not waiting for handouts. They just need the right investment and the right support and the right adaptation measures.
I'm glad that you mentioned your work with Ephad as well. As I mentioned, you are a Goodwill ambassador for the United Nations International Fund for Agriculture Development, Ephad. And in 2020, you and your husband, Idris Elba, launched a $40 million fund with Ephad to prevent the global pandemic from triggering a global hunger and food crisis. Can you speak more about that work and why it's so important for you and your husband?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and it does stem back to my mother so often, because she grew up in a rural area. She had a pastoral lifestyle. She grew up in Somalia, and she knew exactly what it meant to live off the land you live on. And she was actually the first person who introduced me to Ephad, and we went on a trip probably 6 years ago now to Sierra Leone with them, looking at the impacts of the Ebola crisis that had happened there and how that had affected the rural people in the area, how did, the markets being closed, the informal markets being closed, what that had done to rural women and their incomes. This is before COVID. So I had no idea we were going to go into a global pandemic and that rural people would be facing across the planet these same issues, just on a much bigger scale. And it was at that point I was like, this is the work I want to do. It's not about the aid cycle. This is about investing in rural people. This is about giving them the finance they need to start up their businesses. People in the global south are extremely entrepreneurship. One of the things you'll notice when you go to Ghana is that everyone's got a business idea. Everyone's got an opportunity that they're thinking about. And I love that. And, it really is just reframing the conversation. I think aid is important. There is a time and a place, of course. If a hurricane happens, people need support immediately. But how are we future-proofing for rural people? How are we future-proofing these issues? And that's one of the reasons I love working with Ephad. They're a great organization. I almost feel like they're a hidden secret, but they are amazing.
Sabrina, I think for a lot of us as consumers, we're not really making those connections to where products are coming from. And then even if, the work that you do outside of your philanthropic work as an actress and a model, just the glam side of Hollywood, sometimes we don't see that connection. What else could or should we be doing as individuals to make sure that these issues are getting the spotlight they need, and also to make sure we're not contributing to the problem?
I'd personally love to ask everybody who's watched this interview, if you're tuning in right now, to share these stories, because I think conversation is still one of the most important tools we have. Our voice is our most powerful tool, period. So if you know about an issue, you can share that at the dinner table, share it with a friend, spread that knowledge, do some research if you feel interested in something. I think we just forget sometimes that we have a responsibility to educate ourselves on what's happening in this world and to be savvy and smart consumers. And I hope that people now, after hearing this, might pick something up and just ask the question, it says cruelty free, but what else is behind this product? Because cruelty free protects animals. That doesn't even talk about, is there CL? Are rural people being affected? Are they being paid fair wages? Fair trade is one thing, but I think we have a responsibility to just go on that brand's website, have a look, do some research. And if you feel comfortable, that's how you should proceed forward. And that's something that I've started doing now that's really just changed the way I think about beauty. And it's not even really corporations' fault necessarily. There's just so many people sometimes in between the rural person farming the ingredient, and by the time it gets to the lab and the formulation, there's so much middlemen. These companies are so far removed, they might not understand, and one of the things that the beauty report highlighted that World Vision had created is there are a lot of ESG regulations that brands can sign up to, but unless they have that firsthand transparency and they go and visit these people and there's somebody on the ground who can directly see what the rural people are going through, there's no guarantee that there isn't any of these harmful issues that are going to come up, right? No parent wants to put their child to work. CL is an issue that happens when people are desperate, when people aren't being paid enough, and then they have no choice, right? So it's just about making sure that women are paid enough, because women will send their children to school. They take care of their families. Statistically, these things are true. You take care of a woman, you feed a nation, right? Even things like education is tied into it. And one of the things I love about agriculture is that it just touches on so many issues. You're looking at gender issues when you're talking about land rights and access to finance. You're talking about children's education and food security. So I just think people need to be informed, share their stories, and make sure they do their research.
Sabrina, thank you so much, not only for your time today, but for the work you are doing to amplify the stories, especially in marginalized communities where people are not paying attention and just, exploitation is happening. And so I thank you for connecting the dots so that when we do go to Sephora, when we do go to Ultra Beauty, like you said, we're not just buying a product and not thinking anything about it, but we're reading the labels. We're advocating for the communities in which these ingredients are being sourced. And we're just paying attention to the issues, because even like you said, with climate change, like it's affecting, some of the most vulnerable communities now, but it's going to affect the planet in a very drastic way. It's going to continue to affect our planet in a drastic way. So, we're all connected. We're all in this thing together. And again, the work you're doing is so pivotal in making sure that we remember our connection and our responsibility.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, Celine. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much.